Caoilte was established in 1989 to manage publicly owned commercial forests. As part of its nature conservation programme, Caoilte has embarked on two major bog restoration projects. The first to restore active blanket bog, and the second to restore raised bog on selected Caoilte-owned afforested sites. Peat began to form in Ireland over 8,000 years ago, about 2,000 years after the end of the last ice age. Scientists from many disciplines recognise the importance of bogs. Biologists, climatologists and archaeologists value the peat archives in the living bogs as they preserve organic material including wood, pollen, artefacts and even human remains.
It's of interest to a variety of scientists because not only for the wildlife that's already on the bogs, they're also of interest to the peat archive. The depth of peat in a bog records past climate through pollen analysis. And so scientists who are interested in past climates can study that.
Bogs are important in that they preserve a record of the past environments. For example, in some parts of the country you find pre-bog wall systems underneath bogs, and you also find bodies of people who are dead actually preserved in bogs.
And also the archaeological artefacts being found are very interesting. There's been from silver hoards and Derry na Flan chalice, and there's actually recently been manuscripts found that were preserved in the bog.
Naturalists cherish the living carpet that covers the peat.
Bogs are important as they're part of our natural heritage that is being lost through habitat destruction.
The bogs, which you see here, are home to a large number of animals, and they range in size from small flies right up to the red deer.
From an actual wildlife point of view, the areas of intact bog left are very important.
Bogs are very important for birds because they have wet areas, pools which they like to feed in.
There are two types of bog found in Ireland: raised bogs and blanket bogs. Raised bogs occur in the Midlands of Ireland and the Bann River Valley. Blanket bogs are found along the west coast of Ireland and in mountainous areas around the country.
One of the most important species of the blanket bog is Anagnus, and Sphagnum actually acts like a sponge. It holds on to the rainwater which falls on the surface of the bog, so it keeps the bog quite wet all throughout the year, even during fairly dry periods. And you can see it can hold on to water as I squeeze the water out of it, so it helps to keep the bog very, very wet.
Areas of bog will actually absorb carbon dioxide and form it into the peat. Because of this retention of the carbon, as the carbon sink helps reduce the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and help with global warming, then reducing the effect.
Ireland is among the last of the European countries where a range of peatlands still exists, and the importance of protecting those of a European conservation value cannot be overestimated.
Raised bogs and blanket bogs used to cover a large expanse of Ireland, and through peat cutting, forestry and drainage, a lot of these areas are being lost. It's a habitat that's rare in Europe as well, and so these need to be protected.
The bogs actually act as a home for a large range of flora and fauna, and these species, most of these species are confined to bogs, and quite a few of these species, because they're confined to bogs, they're very rare outside of boglands, both in this country and in the EU.
Vast tracts of bog have been degraded due to draining, afforestation, burning, overgrazing and cutting for use as fuel.
Between the 1950s and the 1980s, it was the policy of successive Irish governments to establish forestry plantations in remote areas, particularly along the western seaboard. The main objective for this was to retain population in areas that had suffered greatly over the preceding decades from depopulation due to emigration. This afforestation programme contributed in this way by creating employment and creating wealth in the form of a sustainable natural resource. It soon became very apparent that many of these plantations on bogs were not sufficiently productive to warrant replanting once the first crop rotation had been harvested. In addition, attitudes had changed, perceptions had changed with regard to bogs. They were no longer seen as wastelands that needed to be reclaimed for agriculture or forestry. They were now recognised as being the uniquely important natural habitats that they are. Coillte is the largest single landowner in Ireland, and as such it has developed its own nature conservation programme, and that programme has included a certain amount of habitat restoration. In those circumstances it was very natural for Coillte to approach the LIFE programme, Life Nature aspect of which specialises in funding nature conservation and habitat restoration. The Natura 2000 network is comprised of over 18,000 sites, again throughout the EU member states, sites which have been designated as special protection areas under the Birds Directive of 1979 and as special areas of conservation under the Habitats Directive of 1992.
In 2002, Coillte commenced work on the first project, Restoring Active Blanket Bog in Ireland, which focused on the restoration of almost 2,000 hectares of active blanket bog, mainly on the western seaboard. In 2004, Coillte started a second conservation project, Restoring Raised Bog in Ireland, focusing on the restoration of 571 hectares of raised bog in the Midlands. Together, the two bogland restoration projects represent a very important conservation initiative, on a scale not seen before in Ireland, that will preserve a unique part of our heritage for future generations.